Hello BookTube, I am determined to film a discussion video of some form or other. So today I'm going to be talking about Barnes & Noble. If this video is successful, I'll post it, and if not, well, you'll never see it. So obviously if you see this, it was successful. But getting back on the topic of Barnes & Noble. So whenever bad news comes out of Barnes & Noble, or Barnes & Noble releases bad news, Steve Donahue will comment on it. And during his comment on whatever news that is coming out of Barnes & Noble, he will ask his audience's experiences with Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble is one of the few remaining corporate bookstore chains in the United States. I think it's only Barnes & Noble and Books A Million right now. All of the rest, Borders, B. Dalton, Walden's, have ceased operations. They've closed permanently. And so the reason for Steve Donahue's most recent commentary on Barnes & Noble is because the Barnes & Noble in the Prudential Center in Boston will be closing in a few weeks in June. And so Steve asked, when's the last time we shopped with Barnes & Noble, or what's the last time we went to Barnes & Noble? And whenever Steve asks this question, I respond with however many more months it's been since the last time he's asked. And so as of this moment, May 18th, 2022, I haven't been inside my local Barnes & Noble in about 5 years, 4 months. The last time I went into a Barnes & Noble was December of 2016. I went in to pick up a copy of the True Story of the Three Little Pigs for a Christmas present for the 4 children of the apocalypse, my 2 nieces and 2 nephews, who in a few months will become 5, and I'm going to have to think of a new nickname for them. But anyway, so I went in to pick up the True Story of the Three Little Pigs by John Scieszka, which is a beloved children's picture book in my family. My mom bought it when me and my brother were young, and we loved it. She loved reading it to us, and she at the time wanted to spread the love to the 4 children of the apocalypse. So I went in to buy it, and as I walked to the children's section, I noticed that fully half the store, or thereabouts, was given over to selling the Nook, Barnes & Noble's in-house e-reader. And in the children's section, a good chunk of that was devoted to being a toy store. And while I understand the reasons behind both, I mean, the toy store is to attract kids. I mean, not all kids are naturally bookish, so toys might kind of attract them to pick up some books too, or one place to shop. But as far as the Nook's concerned, I fully understand that at the time, e-reading was the next big thing, and the belief went that everybody would want an e-reader because pretty much we're all supposed to want tech. We're all supposed to want to collect inordinate amounts of tech. So I can understand that thought. It didn't quite turn out that way. E-reading didn't take off as spectacularly, I think, as a lot of prognosticators thought it would. I mean, now that could be possibly changing, or it might not be as the years go by, but that's neither here nor there. But when I did see half the store given over to selling the Nook, I was incensed. I was pretty ticked off. Because while I understand the reasons why, the problem is that what's going to happen with the books that have been displaced? Are they going to migrate to the part of the store that's still a bookstore? And if they are, well, who are they going to displace from there? Is it just going to be less individual copies of individual books, or is it going to be whole genres, whole lists of authors who are no longer going to be sold in store, and for readers who would like to pick up those books, they'd have to order them online and either pick them up from the store or get them shipped. And that largely annoyed me, and a lot of the changes that have come to Barnes & Noble over the last 10-15 years, in addition to the Nook thing, has made me less interested in going to Barnes & Noble. That's not to say that I haven't shopped with Barnes & Noble in those 5 years, 4 months. I have. I've actually shopped 3 times, which is in itself not terribly that impressive. And that's largely because I had gift cards. So 2 Christmases in 2017 and 2018, I had a gift cards for Christmas to Barnes & Noble, and I shopped there for that. And also about a little more than 6 months ago, for my last birthday, my brother and sister-in-law got me a gift card to Barnes & Noble. And so I picked up Gulag by Applebaum, which I'm quite pleased with. I need to actually get around to reading it, though. I had originally planned on picking up a few volumes of Fairy Tale by Hiro Mashima, but unfortunately the gift card wasn't enough to cover the costs plus taxes and shipping and handling. And while that's normally not a big issue, because if you have your own debit card on file with them, well, whatever overages from the gift card, it will be taken up by the card on file. But unfortunately, in the year since the last time I shopped with Barnes & Noble, my card had been updated. I'd gotten a new card, and so I went to go edit it, and the website didn't let me. So I had to forego getting 2 volumes of Fairy Tale and pick up Gulag instead, which I'm okay with. I mean, I did eventually pick up the 2 volumes of Fairy Tale I wanted, but yeah. So that kind of illustrated, I think. So, I mean, it hasn't been all that long since I've shopped with Barnes & Noble. But I think the thing is that, I mean, of course, it's only 3 times in 5.5 years. And so it's still not much. I mean, it's pretty paltry. And thinking about it, I think that while for 15 years at least, Barnes & Noble was the only retail bookstore in Waco. I mean, it did displace, I think, the 2 mall-centered bookstore chains, B. Dalton and Walden's. They were both in the Richland Mall up to at least the late-ish 90s, which was about the time Barnes & Noble came in. Although the exact history of when Walden's and B. Dalton left the Waco area vis-a-vis Barnes & Noble coming in, I don't quite know for sure. But I do know that originally me and my family would go to Dalton's and B. Dalton and Walden's to bookshop. And then once Barnes & Noble came in, we switched to Barnes & Noble. And for years, Barnes & Noble was the only retail bookstore in town. I mean, yet there were 2 independent used bookstores, Golden's and Brazos Books, that are really good, but They sell used books, they don't sell new books. And this lasted for like a decade, 15 years. And then Hastings came in, which was a general entertainment media store that did sell books, both new and used. And about a quarter to a fifth, fifth to a quarter of the store in Waco was a bookstore. And I think about 10 years ago, a Books A Million store opened at the new mall, which I can never remember what the name of that mall is. But Books A Million didn't last long at all. I went in there once, and that was the only time I went in there. It didn't last. Waco largely, I think, is a one chain bookstore town. And so, once again, Barnes & Noble was the only bookstore in town, excluding the used bookstores, until a new independent bookstore opened in 2019, Fabled, which I haven't personally shopped in-store with yet, but I have shopped a little bit online, although there was only like 2 purchases, and I haven't really shopped with them since. And anyway, but we're talking about Barnes & Noble, not Fabled. So I think to an extent, while for a long time Barnes & Noble was the only bookstore in town, and consequently the only bookstore I would go to, particularly for new books. I mean, it's relatively recently that I've been to Brazos, and then Golden's. But I think despite that Barnes & Noble being the only bookstore in town, it never really held my affections or my loyalty. It's Barnes & Noble is just another bookstore, one that I found some wonderful books in, but like, I guess the affection, the loyalty, I just don't have. So I can easily say I haven't been in a Barnes & Noble in almost 5.5 years, without really being all that upset about it. Not to say that I was so incensed by half the store being a tech store that I swore never to go back in or to shop with them. Obviously, I've shopped with them some since, and if they do manage to hurry up and get a copy of Applebaum Hanako-kun Volume 4 by AidaIro, I am going to jump on it, because I want that volume and I want it now. But anyway, and they are the only ones that actually have a rough estimation of when one's going to come in. Of course, they also said that about last month or 2, and they never get them. So anyway, but yeah, so I guess I don't really have that loyalty to Barnes & Noble, although it's not the sort of disdain that some partisans for independent bookstores have, because I'm not really independent bookstore partisan, given how much I shop with Amazon. I cannot claim that. And that it's actually been relatively recently that I shopped with, more heavily with independent bookstores, namely Book People and Powell's. And both of those were, as well as with Fabled, was an attempt to help them out during the pandemic. Because obviously the pandemic affected everyone negatively, and I thought buying some books from them probably would help. And so in the 2+ years since then, I haven't really shopped with Fabled again. I mean, the selection's not quite to my taste. I mean, if you want maybe more literary fiction or more general fiction, great place probably. Although I've never obviously been there. Would actually like to go, but getting around to doing it's not necessarily all that easy. But I've more heavily shopped with Book People and Pals in the 2 years since I started kind of reconnecting with independent bookstores. But I mean, even though Barnes & Noble doesn't, like, I don't have disdain for it that perhaps, again, independent bookstore partisans would have as sort of one of the corporate behemoths that wrecked the book selling industry in the late 90s and early 2000s. I also don't have an affection for it. It's just another bookstore that I went to, and given the pandemic and even before then, most of my book buying has been online. So, the last time I physically went to a bookstore was Golden's in 2019, August. The whole bus incident. And then I went to the Friends at the Library book sale in October of 2019. So, and I haven't been in person book buying since then. So it's been over 2 years, going on 3 years. So, I mean, pretty much 100% of my book buying has been online, and I did shop with Barnes & Noble about 6 months ago, well, a little bit more, because it would be in November. So, yeah, hopefully this makes sense, because I guess my feelings are it's just another bookstore. So yeah, BookTube, that's my thoughts on Barnes & Noble. I'll maybe be back tomorrow with another reaction video, or I might take tomorrow off and just be back on Friday with weekly read. So until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.